And there we go. It's 2:30 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, and you're watching Innovation Fika with me, Donny, live online on multiple channels, LinkedIn and YouTube being the main ones. As you know, every Wednesday, 2:30 p.m., I go live with my Innovation Fika, Innovation Coffee Break. Fika means coffee break in Swedish, as you might have understood by now. And for this very fast-paced half an hour, I get to meet some really cool people with really cool ideas and some very, very good key points, key learnings as well that we always can take away to learn something else. So it's a short coffee break chat with somebody who you should meet together with me. And all of these shows are recorded, and you can find them on my YouTube channel. So this is episode 94 today with Zevi. 94 episodes so far. Amazing. They're all on YouTube, and all of my written content, since I tend to write and post almost daily on LinkedIn about startups and entrepreneurship and inspiration, they go to my Medium page. So if you go to Medium and then Donia Silegon is there, you'll find all of the posts, 504 posts or something there now. And then on the YouTube page on Innovation Fika, you'll find the 90 and so episodes. I see people coming online already. Really cool to see you all coming online. Say hi, where you're from, get the conversations going. This is a live show, after all, and it's live because we want you to interact as well. So hi, let's see. Okay, cool. Maron Tari, sorry. Christ, I couldn't see. Anyway, enough about that. Enough about me. Hi, Colson, as well. Good to see you. Coulson online there from Pakistan. Nice seeing you there again. And enough about me. Let's get our guest in. Zevi, welcome to the show. Live from Jerusalem.
Hey, Donnie. Nice to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I know I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to get right into the whole launching thing. The go-to-market guy. I saw all of your titles. I mean, I've been studying your LinkedIn resume kind of thing. So many cool things going in there. But let's do this by the Innovation Fika book, and I'll just ask you, as I always ask all guests, Zevi, who are you and what do you do?
Well, it's great to be with you. In, I guess, a minute or less, I am a product and marketing executive for the last about 15 years. I've been with various companies in the tech space. As you mentioned, I'm currently in the Israeli tech scene, born and bred in Detroit, Michigan, came to Israel. And basically, I've had the opportunity to have a exposure to a lot of product launches in a lot of different spaces, B2B, B2C, currently B2D, business to developer. I've launched products with companies like Verizon and Sprint, Dixon's Carphone in terms of the big names. I've also launched some of my own products direct to consumer. Currently, I'm with a company called Lifecycle, which is an up-and-coming dev tool SaaS company based here, and we're building collaboration platform for developers to let them do their work better. But what this has given me the opportunity to do is to really have exposure to a wide range of product launches with a lot of different types of companies. And that's also what I do on the side is I try to help and advise startups, nonprofits with their own product and marketing initiatives and their own product launches.
Cool. This is, I mean, we could probably do this like 2 or 3 hours, but we have this, the world's fastest 30 minutes, and I will jump straight into it because I've been working with startups, my own and others, for like the last 25 years or so. And when you're talking about the launch, I mean, we can talk about so many, misconceptions and preconceptions and ideas about things like that. But I think it's just so funny because I usually say is that, people work in the dark for like 2 years, and then they go publish your website and they go, ta-da, we're finished, it's done, and I think you have more to say about that than that. So, but what about, let's talk about some, if you're looking into a successful product launch, what would you say are some common
common themes? So first of all, the way you framed it, I think, is a great way to frame it, where I think product launch kind of has this connotation of being like the final, the end game. Like, this is it, we've made it. And I think that a good way to frame some of these key ideas and takeaways would be to talk about some misconceptions that companies, that people, that entrepreneurs have. So maybe let's talk about 3 or 4 misconceptions that I've seen come up again and again. The first, I would say, is that product launches successful product launches start way before most people realize. And what I mean by that, in a nutshell, is that a successful product launch is not just an ad in the newspaper or a YouTube video or some sort of launch event. There's a lot of planning that has to go into it. I think that at the end of the day, a product launch is really just a tool. It's a tool to get a company or a product where it needs to go. And so just like any other initiative, there has to be clearly defined goals, and there has to be proper preparations that we can dive into more in a bit if you'd like. But obviously, there needs to be a very clearly defined plan for how to prepare for the successful launch. The second misconception that I see a lot is the inverse of that, which is that the product launches often can and should continue way after the launch event. So you think of a launch event as like, I don't know, again, you could rent out a whole conference hall and throw a party and get a celebrity to talk about you, or whatever the form factor that it's going to take is. But at the end of the day, the launch is just a means to an end. And so whether that's generating traffic or buzz or brand awareness, you need to be able to capture that energy and capitalize on it as you go. So continue to build momentum with your funnel, to continue to build traffic, and keep the momentum going. And it may even manifest itself with mini launches as you go. You might have new features as you progress with your product. Another common misconception, again, just to give you kind of the headline, is that people think, companies often think, especially this is especially common in younger startups or indie entrepreneurs, is that the launch, there's like one shot at the apple. And I think that with launches, you can launch more than one time. The world is a busy place, and especially if you're launching a digital product, the platforms that you're using to launch are forgetful places. And so I've seen companies, and I've experienced this myself, to launch multiple times over the course of a year, or maybe year over year, to try to capitalize on this kind of utility that we call a launch in order to generate momentum at different points. And finally, another, a fourth and final one I'll just mention is that I think that product launches are often overrated. And I know it sounds silly because we're talking here about the importance of a product launch. But at the end of the day, we have to remember is that, when we're building products, there's a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of milestones and things that we can use in our toolkit to get things done. And so a launch is really just one splice of time. It's one stop on the train. And you might be successful, you might not be successful, but that's the story of every day of an entrepreneur's life. And you can't get too up and down about the success or not success of a launch. There's always going to be tomorrow, and your product life cycle is going to be a lot longer than the 1 week or the 1 month or the 1 day launch that you've experienced.
I'm nodding. I've been there, done that. I have every single T-shirt in the wardrobe of all of those. But coming back to what you were saying, that I can just second that launch isn't, it's not one day. It's not, one event. It's like the everything, the planning into it. How do we actually create what we're going to do? And then the after effects of, okay, so we're finally live. What do we do now then to keep it going? So seeing it over a stretch of time, I think is really, really good to have that image of it's not one day. It's not sort of one.
Yeah. And I'll just add to that. And I mentioned it before, but just to emphasize this point is that, to me, in my mind, a launch is really just a tool. It is a milestone. It is an event. It should be celebrated, and we'll talk about the importance of maybe celebrating that in a few minutes. But I think that just like you have, in your marketing plan, you have different initiatives or efforts that you want to capitalize on in order to generate momentum or traffic or leads or signups or whatever it is that you're optimizing for. The launch really is just that. It's just another tool in your tool belt, and you really should treat it as such.
So how do you, again, 1,000 questions building off that, but this whole, in the startup, I'm just taking this as an example now, in, this whole sort of thing, engineers tend to launch too late. And then, the whole thing about if you're not ashamed of your product, it's too late, that kind of, the US very startup kind of thing. When should I launch my product? I mean, is there a time when I should launch it?
That's a great question. And I think the way I like to frame this question is by asking another question, which is really, what is it that you're looking to achieve? So again, if you're taking the assumption that I just said before, which is that the launch is really just a means to an end. It's a tool that you and your company have in order to achieve something. So the first most important thing is to gain alignment within your team, certainly, and make sure that you yourself, if you're the product owner or the owner of the launch, you have to make sure that you have clarity on what is it that we're trying to achieve with this launch. And you have a number of options. You could have a product which is in its early stages and you want to launch the product in a what we call a soft ways because you want to get a certain amount of beta users. But again, just to emphasize that point, let's say if you did an unguarded launch, you could generate, let's say, 1 million signups. Maybe 1 million signups is not necessarily what you want right now. Maybe what you're looking for is your 100 first customers so that they can, break your onboarding and give you some insight so that you can then scale properly. So that's an extreme example, but the point is the same no matter what your situation is that you really have to define what is it that we're looking to achieve with this launch, and then kind of reverse engineer from there. Because once you have your goal defined and your kind of objective defined, you can look back and say, well, okay, what goes into this? What check boxes do I need to make sure are checked off in order to allow me to achieve this objective? And that could be, and what you want to do is kind of walk through the journey. You want to walk through the user journey and your own journey of going to market and say, well, what are the components here? I might need a landing page. I need some automations with my email. I need to make sure my branding is on par because I'm going to have some marketing and stuff around this. I want to make sure I'm capitalizing on that. Maybe I need to reach out to an influencer or two to help me augment it. There's a million different directions that can go, and each one of these is its own discussion. But the point is to have at least an initial plan so that you can have these check boxes checked, and then you and your company can feel comfortable that, okay, we're now in a position to make this launch as successful as possible.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. And as I said, I'm seeing lots and lots of people online. Thank you everyone for commenting. Keep the comments going and post questions in the feed. We can pick them up as we go along here for the rest of the show as well. But coming back to what you were saying there with the actually having a goal with why you are launching, because I've made that mistake myself as well, and launched in the belief that, heck, we'll just launch it and we'll see. We're supposed to launch it, right? We didn't really have any idea because we just thought that put it out there and things will happen. Right. And the wrong things happened because we actually got a number of signups, as you said. I've done everything that you were saying here, but they were the wrong signups. Wasn't the customers we wanted. They weren't giving us the right data. They were just signing up because it says sign up, but it was no intention and no clear idea of why actually what we were doing. So I completely buy into that. But how do I plan a launch? I mean, what goes into the planning? And how do I?
So it's a great question. I do want to just make a point on that last sentence that you said, is that it's easy to say kind of academically, and it's easy to talk about planning and checklists and all these things. At the end of the day, it often is not as clear cut as we'd like it to be. And there's a whole bunch of moving parts and a lot of opinions in the room, and you might have investors and a board and stuff like that. And I think what's important is that, I think as a marketing guy, like as the head of marketing currently in my startup, I've come to realize that you don't really know what you're doing. You're living a life of kind of failed experiments and successful experiments, but everything you're doing is kind of an educated assumption and a guess. And you just have to be able to learn from what works and continue to do that, learn from what doesn't work and continue to take that away. So there definitely is going to be an element of that. All you can do is kind of put yourself in the best possible position. So again, in terms of like the practicalities of the launch itself, so it's obviously going to depend a little bit on what kind of product you have. But let's assume that you're talking about, let's say, a digital product, at the moment, or some sort of we're talking about tech and maybe a SaaS platform or something like that. So obviously, you have to have your product kind of fundamentals defined. You have different people like to define MVP differently, or your minimum viable product. You want to make sure that your product is functionally able to sustain itself and be able to provide that value, the value that your customers will come to expect, and that will allow you to scale. I think also from a marketing standpoint, you need to make sure that you have a story which is at the very least clear. You need to make sure that you understand who it is that you're assuming that you're targeting. You just mentioned that yourself. What's the story that I'm telling and who am I telling it to? If you don't have those things 100% clear, then it's going to be very hard to go to market. I think also then with those elements in place, you can then start to define, well, other companies and other products in my space, what are the mechanisms that I have in my disposal for launching? You have things like Product Hunt or Hacker News potentially, which are very popular launch platforms for digital products. And then, around each of these is kind of like a microscience as to how do I optimize and generate the traffic around each of these things. So it really is kind of like a sequential, a linear sequence of making sure I have my ducks in a row, making sure I understand what it is that I'm selling, how I'm selling it, who I'm selling it to, and then where do I go to, put up my shop, so to speak, and to start selling my goods.
Adding one more thing that I think, going back to what we said in the beginning, again, let's not miss. Launch isn't the one day, the one push of the button. It's the before, and then we happen to launch something, and then it's the after. So that's the whole process we're talking about here. It's not the one. It's a build up, and then something happens, and then there's a follow up on that. So definitely. Right. But you mentioned a number of platforms here, and so how do I look at complementary platforms, and depending on if it's either a hardware product or a software product? I mean, how do I work with the different platforms to make it?
So it's a great question, and the way I like to look at this is the same way I like to look at marketing in general, because again, at the end of the day, marketing and trying to market a launch event is really the same as marketing a product. I'm utilizing all of the opportunities that I have at my disposal that are relevant, and I really think that you can't avoid taking what we call an omni-channel approach to these things. I think that in order to have a successful launch and to promote it successfully, you really need to look at multiple channels in parallel. It's not just like one place where, again, you're going to rent out the 4,000 seat theater and invite some sort of celebrity, and that's going to be the launch. No, that could be an important component to the launch, but the launch has got to be usually over time and through a whole bunch of different channels. So just to list some of them to give it a little bit of structure and texture. So you have the digital platforms that we mentioned. Product Hunt is very well known. Hacker News is actually perhaps less well known, depending on what circles you move in. I encourage everybody to check it out. It's the Y Combinator kind of news aggregator site, and they have a specific tab there that's called Hacker News Show. And it's free. Anybody can do it at any time, and you can do it twice a day or twice a week. It doesn't make a difference. You can just post a link to your show. I want to show off this tool or this product that I've launched. And the goal there is to get people to upvote you and to recognize it and to keep that at the top of the page so that you'll get as much eyeballs and traffic coming your way. And there's other products too, and depending on the type of product, enterprise or direct to consumer, there's different platforms that you should be looking into, and they're not difficult to find, and there's a lot out there. You also have, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's really good of you to mention those platforms, because I still think that most people, they don't consider them or even know of them actually, that they can be used as tools for their launch. They just go, oh, let's release a web page about it, and then we'll have an event physically somewhere, and we'll do something on Instagram. That's what. But they forget about all of these other complementary channels and actually platforms that they can use to actually build the whole.
Yeah, I think these days it's really important to, there's so much news out there, and there's so much noise, I should say, out there, is that you really need to leverage these other these other tools that the world has given us in order to make people recognize where you are. You can't just assume that because you're on Instagram or Twitter, you put a tweet that someone's going to care. The world is a busy place, and so you need to utilize the platforms that have been built for these kinds of things. I actually, I don't know if we'll mention it later in the show. I have a platform that I am kind of a platform of resources that I'm building myself. This is one of the things that I'm aggregating, is kind of like a collated list of suggested. That's right, productmarketing.fyi. It's kind of like a library of resources and playbooks that anybody who is in the product marketing go-to-market space can utilize. It is live, but it's not finished, so anybody goes there can subscribe. There should be some much better content in the coming week or two, but be that as it may, one of the things that I'd like to do is to put a clearer list together where people who are saying, hey, where can I go with my product, can simply go there and at least get an initial idea of the kinds of things, the kinds of platforms that they can utilize for these kinds of activities.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, lots of comments and questions coming. I think was one interesting comment here, and this is also on the misconception thing here. But a long question. Can you talk about service offering versus a product launch? I mean, companies that are in IT services where they are not software vendor, where they're selling the expertise. But if it's a new service, it's a launch, I'd say. Or
yeah, at the end of the day, I think that everything fundamentally is the same, and that's what I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Whether you're launching, a preloaded mobile app to 50 million subscribers in Verizon on their mobile phones, or an app to the App Store where you're going to have 100 people in the first month. Fundamentally, obviously, there's differences. There's no question, and the specific differences have to be considered. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals remain the same, which is well, okay, if I have a service business, so then, I have to make sure I really understand at least who I'm assuming I'm selling to. What is the type of service? You might want to go, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, you might want to be targeting certain Reddit communities and say, go over there and have some sort of strategy that's around niche communities to be able to create content and to start talking about this and saying, hey, you might have some introductory offering that allows, hey, you got, the first 100 people that are interested in this kind of service can engage with me. So really, it depends on understanding who your audience is. Where are they hanging out? Is it a LinkedIn-based audience? Is it Twitter? Is it Instagram? Where are these people spending their time? What kind of content are my, let's say, competitors using? We didn't even talk about competitive analysis, but I cannot overstate the importance of that. Looking at other successful companies in your niche, saying, how have they gone to market? What can I learn from their activities? And there's a whole science around that. And so fundamentally, it's really just gets to the nuts and bolts of who am I selling to, what am I selling, where are they operating, and how do I communicate the value as clearly as possible.
And I'll be going, and again, I'm going back to something you said in the beginning. You said it very quickly, it passed like whoosh, but it was oh so true. And you said digital, when you post on digital platforms, it's a very forgetful media. You post once and you think, I'm done. But hey, I mean, I post like every day, and if 1,000% of everybody on LinkedIn sees that post, heck, if you have a live event, maybe the person was sick that day. Even if it's and digital is kind of, as you said, one post doesn't really count.
No question. And that's why, launch events, and maybe I'll just mention this in passing before we go, is that, I think that, again, launch events are usually, it's not one event. Launches usually can go over time, sometimes even months, or perhaps even over the course of 6 months. You might be, hey, we've just launched. You can kind of use it as an angle to present yourself as a new product that's there. I think also that, with the launches themselves, it's certainly what you said is 100% true. And by the way, people use this mentality when it comes to content. You see a lot of the big content creators on LinkedIn, for example, will use this mantra. And I know we're veering off topic half a step, but they say no one cares about the content you posted 2 weeks ago. So repurpose it, rewrite that same post that got good traction, and repost it. Different 1,000 people are going to see it. Different people. So that mentality helps not just with product launches, but also with content strategy. And it really, really is important. You have to be persistent and you have to be consistent because that really is what a launch is all about.
Yeah, cool. Again, as I said, the world's fastest 30 minutes. It's 14:53, and we're getting to the point where we have to get into the top 3 tips of our guests, because our guests always leave us with top 3 key learnings. And today, then, we're going to go through Zevi's top 3 tips when it comes to product launching a product. Tip number 1 being define your launch goals.
Right. So we mentioned this quickly, and I cannot, again, overstate the importance of this, is that you want to make sure that you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. That could be in just a broad goal. Obviously, if you can define KPIs or certain specific metrics or measurables, that would be ideal. And then you want to reverse, well, we'll get to that in the second tip, but then, that's the basis of everything else that you're going to do. Make sure you understand your goals.
Very good. And tip number 2, create a launch checklist.
Right. So once we define our goals, so you want to reverse engineer that and say, well, okay, what are the things that I need in order to allow me to achieve those goals? And those could be marketing, those could be technical, those could be product-oriented goals, those could be collaboration goals if I have to reach out to an influencer. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong number of checkboxes to put there, but you have to make sure that you're comfortable with your ability to put your best foot forward and then to kind of support the influx of attention that you're about to get, whether it's customer support or otherwise. So make sure you have those launch checklists clearly defined.
Yeah, and one thing that you actually mentioned as well in passing before, which might sound obvious when you hear it, but we miss it all the time, was you said that figure out what you wanted to achieve with which audience, where they are, in which channels, and how to work that. We overlook that all the time, and I think that is
absolutely
gold.
Because that's the other side of consistency. You have to be consistent, but you can't do everything everywhere for everyone all the time. You do have to prioritize your efforts. You do have limited resources. So let's say social media is a great example. Pick your top 2 or 3 platforms that people are operating in. Double down on those. Try that. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, also great. You can move on to the next thing. Be ready for success or failure.
Awesome. And then tip number 3, don't get too up or down after launch.
That's right. Launches come and go. Your life cycle of your product is a lot longer. I will say, which is also super important, is that one overlooked aspect of a launch, which is actually important to get more up about, is your internal kind of motivation. You have often a team that's worked really hard for potentially months or maybe even more than a year to get a product out. It could be that this event is going to only take a day, a week, a month, and you'll have a spike in traffic. That spike will, go down and plateau. That's all when it comes to the product or the company. But with the people internally, you should actually use the opposite approach. You should celebrate it. You should let people feel accomplished, let people feel like they have crossed a threshold and a milestone. That is important for kind of motivation internally, and just good practice in keeping a positive spin on the efforts that people are making. There's a human side to these things. It's not all numbers. It's not all product launches. So don't get too up or down when it comes to the product or the numbers or the long-term vision of your product. But do get way up and celebrate the fact that your team has achieved a tremendous goal, and don't be afraid to do that.
And again, I'm nodding here and saying, and everybody listening here, you have no idea how this is the gold tips here, because this, again, what you said, that we forget to actually even promote internally what we're doing externally. And I'm just bouncing off that. I usually say that one of the best internal motivative efforts is usually some kind of external campaign, so people can see their brand out there doing things and they can be proud
Absolutely.
of what they're, so actually make sure that everybody receives the newsletters that you send to other people. They should have, they should see what you're saying and use the launch. This is a perfect opportunity to use the launch to celebrate internally that, hey, we reached the milestone. This is fantastic. Ta-da!
Absolutely.
Campaign and celebrate. Yeah.
And not just at the big launch. I mean, even if you have smaller, if your team is working on a new feature, an important fix or something like that, very often we work even in close companies or small companies. We work in silos, and we just assume that nobody's going to care. What's the difference? Tell people about it. Let them celebrate your successes. Celebrate other people's successes. Make that a culture, and it really pays dividends.
And another comment here from one of our frequent viewers here. I plan to find my MVP users on Reddit, so I'm trying to post daily to build a presence. And I can also second that when it comes to Reddit and Reddit threads. It's a fantastic place to find your first 100, 200, the people who actually want to try stuff, the super early innovators. They are on Reddit. I mean, they're there for a reason as well. They like trying stuff.
Yeah. So Reddit, I have a lot to say on Reddit. I'm going to have a lot of Reddit specific content on that platform that I mentioned. I will just say that Reddit is a double-edged sword, has tremendous potential, but it's also can be risky because it's the Wild West. A lot of anonymous users hiding behind their handles. So be careful for vicious comments, and especially if you get into more niche communities, there might be heavily regulated in terms of what kind of promotional content you could put there. You could very easily find yourself banned from communities if you start posting things which look like promotions. But yes, in general, Reddit is awesome. You should definitely have Reddit as part of your marketing and go-to-market strategy.
Used correctly, good, and as any tool used incorrectly, not so good.
Exactly.
And all of this will be on productmarketing.fyi, something that you're launching as we speak.
That's right, and it's free at the moment. I'm not no charging for it. I would love to have people sign up. I'd love to just create resources that people can benefit from if you're in the go-to-market product marketing space. So please feel free to subscribe there and reach out to me, and be happy to be in touch.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Zevi, for sharing so much gold value in such a short time. The world's fastest 30 minutes. Everyone, connect with find him on LinkedIn, connect with him there, go to the webpage.
And I'll just say, if I can help with anybody, bounce ideas, if you want to talk about go to market or any of these things, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm an open book, and I'd be happy to try to make the time if I can be valuable or helpful.
Fantastic. And I'm going to rewatch the episode and actually listen and again attentively to what you said. So many good things coming in here today. It is 14:59. Our 30 minutes are up. Zevi, thank you so much for being part of the show. Thank you everyone for watching and for commenting. And with that, I will wish you a wonderful Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. Take care. Staffan Bergsten, good friend of mine. Hey, Staffan, good to see you, sir. Awesome. Take care, everyone.
Donnie, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and let's be in touch.